Chapter 8. Belief, a creative story. As you believe, so shall it be done unto you. A belief is something that we choose to accept in our minds about the way we perceive the world around us. It is our recognition that some idea or thing is true and valid. Our beliefs are the things that we decide to think are true based on the information and our understanding of that information up to this point in our lives. Our beliefs are based on our perceptions of life, as we have experienced it or accept as true. However, just because we see something a certain way does not necessarily mean that's the way it actually is in reality. Many times, there is a difference between what's true and the truth. Here's an example. The Federal Centers for Disease Control and Prevention issued a flyer to combat myths about the flu vaccine. It recited various commonly held views and labeled them either true or false. Among those identified as false were statements such as, "The side effects are worse than the flu," and "Only older people need a flu vaccine." When University of Michigan social psychologist Norbert Schwartz had volunteers read the CDC flyer, he found that, within 30 minutes, older people misremembered 28% of the false statements as true. 3 days later, they remembered 40% of the myths as factual. Younger people did better at first, but 3 days later they made as many errors as older people did after 30 minutes. Most troubling was that people of all ages now felt that the source of their false beliefs was the respected CDC. The research also highlights the disturbing reality that once an idea has been implanted in people's minds, it can be difficult to dislodge. Denials inherently require repeating the bad information, which may be one reason they can paradoxically reinforce it. Indeed, repetition seems to be a key culprit. Things that are repeated often become more accessible in memory, and one of the brain's subconscious rules of thumb is that easily recalled things are true. As we get older and we learn new things, we realize that certain assumptions we held at a younger age were not as accurate as the new view we currently have of the world. All the things we believe we know about the world are only our best assumptions based on all the things we have learned up to that point, but that does not necessarily make any of them true. When we are young, we learn things. When we're older, we often have to unlearn things before we can move forward. Having control over our own beliefs is probably the most powerful thing we can do to find long-term happiness and peace in our daily lives. However, nobody likes to be wrong, and so we find ourselves holding on to beliefs long after we suspect they may be outdated or simply wrong. First you make your beliefs, then your beliefs make you. As we examine our beliefs, we find that quite a lot of them were the influence of our parents, friends, and education. We accepted them because we trusted that these people knew the truth. I'm not blaming them, that's what they believed. If we go back far enough in history, we find that everybody believed that the world was flat, that we could never get a human to fly, that we would never send a voice across open air without wires, that even if we managed to build a motorized carriage, which we now call a car, there would be no roads to drive it on. We believed that replacing a human heart with a healthier one in a living person was beyond conceivable, that having electrical power to light our homes and power to operate household appliances was impossible and impractical, that a human could run a mile in under 4 minutes without killing himself was ridiculous, that being able to talk to a person on the other side of the world in real time was the fantasy of madmen, and that sending a human to the moon and back safely was nothing more than science fiction. These were all beliefs that were accepted as true by millions of people until they weren't. George Bernard Shaw said, "The reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable man persists in trying to adapt the world to himself. Therefore, all progress, all new ideas, depends on the unreasonable man." Our beliefs are based on our perception of life, which are based solely on our experiences and knowledge about life. Just because we see something a certain way does not necessarily mean that's the way it is in reality. How would you answer this question? What is your definition of reality? Perception and reality are two different things. Looking back, we can see in history, Whenever someone made a revolutionary discovery or developed a new idea, the first reaction was often negative, even to the point of ridiculing the person. People even violently opposed the ideas, many times threatening to imprison or even murder the person who created them. Then finally, after lots of struggling, it was accepted as the new reality. In fact, it was just a newer perception, a new perspective on what was possible. The way to do those things had always been there. It just took us some time to uncover them. So, who decides what you believe? Our beliefs can empower us or imprison us, but they are our beliefs, so we decide, and if we don't like them, we have the power to change them. When we examine them, we realize that many of the beliefs we hold are self-limiting. We realize that almost all the problems in our lives are based on perceptions we hold about the world that are the equivalent to believing that the earth is flat. It's no wonder so many of us suffer and struggle in our lives. We are walking around the world in a self-created prison, based upon the inefficient ways of thinking that we picked up from others who were just as clueless as us. The difficulty is that they are so ingrained into our very being that it is hard to identify which ones are right and good and which ones are wrong and harmful. Another word for belief is paradigm. A paradigm is a mental program that has almost exclusive control over our habitual behavior, and almost all our behavior is habitual. Look at your average day. You get up around the same time, and your routine of going to the bathroom, taking a shower, dressing yourself in a specific order, making tea or coffee, leaving for work at the same time, etc., is running on autopilot, and that's just the first hour of the day. What else runs on autopilot as you go through your day? How can you reasonably expect to get different results when so much of what you do each day is the same? As a wise man once said, the first sign of madness is doing the same things the same way and expecting different results. So, how do we break out of those routines that have brought us to this possibly unsatisfactory point in our lives? We can take advantage of the fact that we run on autopilot a lot of the time, once we determine what the details of those habits need to be to lead us to success rather than the mundane. I have found that belief is the pivotal point that brings about the change we're looking for, and here's why. The subject of belief is complex and very challenging. The more I studied it, the more complex it became, because there are so many streams that come under its umbrella. Ultimately, I have come to the understanding that belief causes a reaction inside us, at the subatomic level, that changes our reality. Let's look again at the sentence that started this whole journey for me. As a man thinks in his heart, so is he. This seems to be saying that what a man thinks in his heart, he will live out in his life. Interesting, but what does that actually mean? I had to step back again to examine the thinks in his heart bit. The combination of thought, which is the brain in action, and emotion, which is the power of the heart, plus the action of faith, which is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen, sets up a vibration at an atomic field level and is the ultimate creative force in our lives. Our belief is an assurance that something exists or is true, even though we may not have proof of it yet. I need to introduce some biology and quantum physics for a minute to put some perspective on this. These are two fascinating subjects, however. Let's not get in too deep here so we don't get sidetracked for too long. 50 trillion cells make up a human. Your mind is the government. Good government equals good health. Every function in your body is present in every cell as potential. What it grows into is dependent on the environment that it is in. Your spirit gives shape to matter. It is the energy. That is the ideal. The invisible world is perfect, the visible world is not. Where is the control in a human being? In our DNA, the double helix, discovered by James Watson and Francis Crick, each single strand has the pattern for the human body's materials. The bases, A, T, C, and G, the genetic code and the sequence of these bases, determine the structure of protein, and there are over 150,000 different proteins to make a human body. The proteins provide for the physical structure and also for your functions, from DNA to RNA. As an analogy, DNA can be thought of as a reference book in a library. while RNA is like a photocopy of a page from that book containing instructions to carry out a task. Then, from RNA to protein. That's the structure that Francis Crick came up with. Your fate and your structure are programmed in the DNA. Crick maintained that the first cause of DNA is control of life. He believed that the fate of the parents was expressed in the child. Your physical, behavioral, and emotional fate are all programmed in the DNA. It is called genetic determinism, where genes control and determine the character of your life. You didn't pick the genes you came with, and you can't change them, so are you a victim of your biological inheritance? If certain types of illness run in your family, do you believe that you are a candidate for the same disease? Are you a biochemical machine controlled by genes? Is this all true? There is a hierarchy of understanding. The structure of science, it seems, is like a building with many floors. The lower floors are the foundation for the floors above. The first floor in science is mathematics, then physics and quantum mechanics, then chemistry, then biochemistry and biology, then physiology. So, before you can understand how biology works, you must understand mechanisms or physics. If a science on a lower floor changes its belief, all the sciences above must accommodate that. Newtonian physics says that the universe is a machine made from matter. However, in 1925, quantum physics said no, the universe is made of energy waves. The key factor here is that when two waves come together, the result, which we call entanglement, will depend on whether they are in phase causing constructive interference, and which produces more energy, or out of phase, which we call destructive interference, which nullifies their individual energy. The big difference in matter and energy waves is that matter can be separated, whereas energy waves cannot. New understanding says we must consider wholeness, that is, the combinations of the effects of matter and energy together. If one looks at the physical body only to find a reason for illness, then a huge part of the equation is being neglected. When someone is ill, then their environment, stress, work, family, and community circumstances must also be considered, along with the physical circumstances. Often, it is those areas of energy that are the cause of the dis-ease or illness. Emotions, which are the energies in motion of a person, may be reacting to the stresses of the circumstances they are living with, and are the cause of the physical breakdown. Pills may ease the physical pain in the short term, but will not solve those issues going forward. Your internal organs in chemistry cannot see the outside world. They are totally dependent on the information and your perception of that information that comes in through your senses. This information must be assessed and categorized by your beliefs, values, perception, environment, culture, and ultimately your self-image, before being passed on to your internal system in the form of energy waves. We have all felt these energies. When you meet someone you are fond of, where your energy waves are in sync, even if you are feeling tired, you feel a boost in your energy. Alternatively, you know some people who drain you of energy after a short time in their company. You don't even need to be in close proximity to some people to feel those waves. Once they walk into the room, you know instinctively if you are going to get along with them or not. You have all felt that feeling of danger when walking down a street that looks fine but has a vibration that sends a shiver down your spine. You sense something is not right. What is that? A deer does not have to get close to a lion to know that there is potential danger there. They can sense it from a distance. It's built-in protection. Funny enough, we were often told by our parents and school teachers not to go by our feelings, but to listen to what people have to say. Some suggest that modern language was designed to hide our feelings. Maybe it is so. The base of our universe is the atom. In the structure of each atom are the nucleus and the electrons in shells. The protons are positive, and the electrons are negative, and every atom has an equal amount of both, so every atom is neutral. However, the electrons are not equally distributed, so one side of the atom is more negative and the other more positive. The atom, which is like a force field, is continually spinning, and its character is that of a wave. The physical particle of an atom is matter, but the activity of the atom is an energy wave or vibration. All atoms create waves. Quantum physics studies the wave activity of an atom. All the waves together are called the field. So, you are made from atoms, but you are also the field. Therefore, you are connected to everything because you cannot separate waves. While you are a physical being, you are giving off energy waves and receiving energy waves in your surroundings. You are made of atoms and molecules. To see this energy at work, sprinkle some iron filings on a sheet of paper. They will fall randomly and without order. Then, place a magnet under the paper and the filings will form a pattern. The magnetic field is not visible to your eyes, but it is there all the time. What can we learn from this simple exercise? That the field shapes matter. Albert Einstein said that the field is the sole governing agency of the particle or matter, so that the invisible field shapes matter. Can we explain the pattern of the iron filings if we don't understand the field? No. We are made up of energy fields. Can we understand our health patterns if we don't understand our energy fields? No. Your physical life is controlled by your energy fields. Matter and molecules are connected and affected by energy fields. All atoms give off energy and all atoms absorb energy. There are different frequencies for each atom, which explains, broadly speaking, how CT scans and MRI scans work. The mind, as in whatever you are thinking about, generates energy, and energy shapes matter, so what you are thinking and what you are believing shapes matter. We are having a positive or negative effect on our environment all the time, and we can change that effect by changing our thinking and our beliefs. When we think about anything, the cells in the brain fire and give off tiny electrical impulses. The brain gives off so many electrical impulses that we can measure them with an EEG electroencephalogram. When the emotions get involved, many cells in the body are firing and giving off impulses. The heart is the most powerful electromagnetic source of energy in the human body, producing the largest rhythmical electromagnetic field of any of the body's organs. The heart's electrical field is about 60 times greater in amplitude than the electrical activity generated by the brain. It is not hard to imagine that all this energy affects the unseen world. It is now scientifically accepted that that which is seen is made by that which is not visible. Everything that we can see is made of things that are invisible, and they are vibrating at frequencies we cannot perceive with our senses. The smallest known particle is a quark. It was discovered or proposed by physicists Murray Gell-Mann and George Zweig in 1964. This little fellow is many times smaller than, and lives inside, the atom and makes up protons, electrons, and neutrons. The atom was understood for many years to be as much as 99% space, which meant that everything we could see as matter was also 99% space. However, that space, or vacuum, is now understood to contain these quarks, which are little packets of energy waves. These energy waves appear and disappear at a phenomenal rate. Physicists tell us that they borrow energy from the future, instantly collide with other quarks, then pay back the energy and disappear. From this viewpoint, solid matter is just energy in a congealed form. A solid object differs from fluid energy only in the rate at which the atoms are moving, its vibration. This was discovered by Albert Einstein, who stated this relationship in the equation E equals mc squared, meaning that solid matter vibrating at a very high rate of speed becomes pure energy. In this equation, derived by the physicist Albert Einstein, E represents units of energy, m represents units of mass, and c squared is the speed of light multiplied by itself. Let us consider an everyday example of this. Water changes into quite different forms depending on how fast its atoms are moving. At a low energy level, water freezes into a hard chunk of ice. If we add energy to the ice, the water molecules vibrate more rapidly, melting into a liquid state. If we continue to add energy, the rapidly moving water molecules break free and float off as steam. These three distinctly different states of matter differ only in the amount of energy in the system. With our eyes, we may see a frozen ice cube, but with our understanding, we know that we can change the ice to steam that will blow away in a puff of wind. We are using our faith in this unseen reality every time we boil water or use a microwave oven. Since we know that the solid chunk of ice can disappear and float away, we can understand intuitively that reality is not as solid as it appears. The reality we see is made up of things that we cannot see. We do not need to become experts in quantum physics. We need only to understand that there is a hidden reality behind that which we can see. When we can see the mountain or the disease or our circumstances with the eyes of our understanding, not just our physical eyes, we believe that they can change, just as we know that ice can easily become steam when the right energy frequency can be applied. Beliefs are at the core of our being and reflect both thoughts and feelings. Beliefs are not just what we think about and agree with. They are those things that we are convinced about enough to affect us emotionally and are a call to action. Because beliefs are reflected in our actions, they have powerful effects on our lives. When we believe something, good or bad, we generate a faith substance, which is an energy force. That force affects what we cannot see at a subatomic level, and that affects the material world around us, and that brings it into being. We cannot help doing this. However, we can decide whether to use our faith for good outcomes or allow fear and despair to influence them negatively. Quote, "If the two make peace and agree with each other in one house, they will say to that mountain, 'Be removed,' and it shall move." Gospel of Thomas 106. In this quote, I believe that the two represents our thoughts and emotions, and the one house represents our body. How this can be used to help our health and well-being is too big a subject to take on here, maybe another time. Here is another quote. "For truly I say to you, that whoever shall say to this mountain, 'Be removed and cast into the sea,' and shall not doubt in his heart, but shall believe that those things which he says shall come to pass, he shall have whatever he says." When we read this passage, we gloss over the literal meaning about moving mountains, because we cannot imagine how beliefs and words can move big, solid things like mountains. We also do not understand how our words and feelings can affect our physical bodies and our health, even though Proverbs 18:23 says that death and life are in the power of the tongue. What we think we understand about reality often conflicts with these ideas. But what if we understood that the mountain is made up of vibrating subatomic particles and, in a way, no more substantial than a cloud of steam? What if we knew that belief is an actual substance, and that words are sound waves that impact reality? When we think of the mountain in this way, it is not so hard to imagine how thoughts and emotions, when spoken out loud with faith, can make a difference. This is true whether the mountain we face is made of rocks or is a disease, addiction, or mental illness. Why do we need to speak these thoughts out loud? Logos is a word associated with the principle of divine reason and creative order. It is the spoken word that changes chaos into order. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And God said, 'Let there be light,' and there was light." When we speak out positive, life-giving, emotionally charged thoughts with faith, it can bring order into the chaotic, muddled, and confused parts of our lives. When we bring the power of our thoughts, our emotions, our beliefs, and the power of our words together, a process often called prayer, we can directly and immediately affect our reality. It may not all become visible to us in one day. After all, it took God 6 days to speak order into the chaotic. So be patient, grow the right beliefs, and keep believing, regardless of what your senses are telling you. Speak out loud your faith-filled words and watch what happens. It will come, because it cannot be any other way, and when it does, it will be good. The ancient magic word abracadabra is believed to come from the Aramaic phrase avracadabra, meaning, "I will create as I speak." The source is 3 Hebrew words, Ab for Father, Ben for Son, and Ruach HaKodesh for Holy Spirit.